Hi, my name's Mike. You may be wondering why my name isn't more flashy like Axe or Bull. Well, that's because this is the real world, not the movies. I work for Guardian, and you're about to see a video on KISS training. Now I know this is going to disappoint some of you, but I'm not going to be showing you how to tongue your lover. KISS stands for Keep It Simple, stupid. And it represents getting back to the basics of firefighting. This is the mission of Guardian, a return to perfecting many of the techniques that have been proven to work throughout the generations, safeguarding them for future firefighters. Some of the things that you're going to see in our videos are probably not what you were taught in the academy or read in a textbook. And now you're probably saying to yourself, why should I try these techniques then? Well, the answer to that is simple. Because they're effing awesome. Besides, how could our salty old-timers be wrong? Listen, our academies and textbooks teach us many general practices, but common sense isn't one of them. Now, if you're the type of firefighter that needs a safe space or thinks that we should have layers of bubble wrap around us before doing our jobs, then these videos probably aren't for you. So do us all a favor and click that little X in the upper right-hand corner of your screen now. For those of you who still possess some mental toughness and grit, stay with us. We know that firefighting is an environmental emergency. Yes, fire hurts the environment, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about specific jurisdictional demands. For example, firefighting in a small town in rural Montana isn't the same as a big city like Boston. They are completely different environments and have different methods and techniques of doing their jobs. The point being, you can never learn enough or train enough in our profession. If the day ever comes when you think that you've learned it all, that's the day you should retire. Or hey, become a chief. I'm obviously joking. Many of us would love to wear that white helmet one day. Regardless, I hope you stay with us for our videos. But for now, let's stop in to Station Hero and see what's going on around the firehouse today.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Hey, how you guys doing, man?
Oh, we're doing a team-oriented room search.
Awesome, man. You guys are great. Heroes, true heroes.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you. All right, guys, back at it. Search that room. Now you see, you're still in the center of the room, but because you've got your tools still on the wall, you're still technically attached to the wall. Now search with your tools, sweep it back and forth, try and find a victim.
Hey, man. Hey, what's going on? I thought I heard a chainsaw running.
Hey, man, we're just doing search training. Look, he's off the wall, but he's still connected.
Holy cow, man. That is such a good technique.
I know, right?
You are bound to save someone with this technique.
I know.
Man, that's awesome. Keep up the good work, guys.
All right, bud.
Well done.
See ya. All right, now keep sweeping with that tool, man.
Help me. I lost the wall. Please help me, save me.
Hey, man, is everything okay in here? I heard somebody crying.
Oh, man, I was practicing searching the room. I lost the wall. I can't.
Oh, man, it's okay, sweetheart. I got just what you need, okay? All right, I'm going to need you to hold on to this. All right? All right, baby, it's going to be fine, okay? All right, muscle up, Buttercup. Stop being a Nancy. If these are your search techniques, I hope you're practicing your Mayday scenarios because you're about to become a victim. If not, why don't you come with us to the training grounds? Let's go over the basics of searching. The art of searching is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. In fact, the primary mission of the fire service is to protect human life. Aggressive primary searches are extremely dangerous, and they are arguably the most vital part of our job. A study was done in 2015. It evaluated 1,000 Mayday events across the country. The number one cause for these Mayday transmissions were firefighters being lost. A high percentage of these were during search operations. The reason for all of this is that aggressive searches are usually done in limited visibility. This causes an enormous stressor on the body, both mentally and physically. This exhaustion ensues panic and stifles our ability to think logically, inevitably leading us to become a victim instead of a rescuer. It is for these reasons that search training needs to be at the very top of the list for firefighters, especially if you're part of a truck company. So with all this in mind, why is it that we search? The answer to that is very simple. It's our job. Of course, this reason doesn't apply to the firefighter that is constantly trying to sidestep his responsibilities. If you're the type of firefighter that has an excuse for not completing your housework or doing training or even getting your approvals, then the last place you need to be is inside of a dwelling, committing yourself to a search to save someone. That task belongs to a firefighter that understands the urgency that in some instances we are the last hope that people have when they are trapped inside of a dwelling. This duty needs to belong to someone that's responsible enough to dedicate every ounce of energy to commit themselves to reaching that individual. If you do your homework, you'll find that 9 out of 10 fires begin with human intervention. It is because of this reason that whenever the conditions allow, we need to commit ourselves to performing an aggressive primary search. So the question becomes, when? When do we do this aggressive primary search? Well, unfortunately, that has become a very gray area for firefighters and command staff alike. The equation that has always been applied to this train of thought is risk versus reward, or risk a lot to save a lot, risk little to save little. Current safety practices around the country are pushing us more and more towards the latter part of that equation of just risking little. So, how about we start using some common sense? Risk a lot. What does that mean? And when should we do it? Risking a lot means you're going to risk your life. That means that you could die. So when should you do that? Well, it's very clear. Anytime someone is confirmed trapped inside of their dwelling, you should be risking your life. If the building is occupied and you know that upon arrival, then you should be inside searching, risking your life. If the building is vacant, you should be inside searching, risking your life. And when a victim is visible, hanging out of a window, then you should be doing everything you can to get them down safely. I know many of you probably just fell off your computer chair hearing me say, risk your life in a vacant building. But let me take you back a couple seconds. 9 out of 10 fires begin with human intervention. So in a vacant building, it didn't just suddenly catch fire on its own. And if you're going to sit back and say, well, it was probably because the utilities were still running, you don't know that until you go inside and find out if the utilities are still running, which means that we have to consider there was probably some type of human intervention. You need to be in there, searching, and finding out. So when are we going to risk a little? Let's use some common sense. If you approach a building and you have black, turbulent smoke coming out, meaning of a possible impending flashover, then you should risk a little. If you pull up and everyone has been confirmed out of the building and command is on scene saying, all is well, the people are safe, then you risk a little. If the building is completely dilapidated and falling in on itself, then obviously you don't want to walk through that front door or climb through a window, so you risk a little. Last but not least, and I shouldn't even have to say this, but if the building is fully involved, then we're obviously not going to go in, so we're going to risk a little. Let's use some common sense here. There are many other scenarios that we could apply to these lists, but the ones I just told you are the ones most commonly seen. Listen, you can't assume that just because you pull up to a front of a building and there's no one outside on the front yard that indicates everyone's safe, or because no one is screaming from the house to save me, save me, save me, that everyone is out. Instead, we need to ingrain the idea in our head that someone is inside until proven otherwise. So how do we prepare for searching? Well, there are some physical ways and practical ways that we can do so. However, there is one thing that is a little bit difficult to prepare for when it comes to searching. And that's going to be a little controversial, and it might upset some of you. What I'm talking about here is arguably the most important trait that a firefighter needs for searching, and that's mental toughness. Unfortunately, this is a quality that is also quickly becoming rare in the fire service. Many of the duties that we are responsible for performing requires us to be mentally and physically uncomfortable. We need to start taking the approach in our job to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So how can you improve your mental toughness? Well, you can start small. That's one way to begin. Take the little things that you're responsible for doing, the small tasks, such as housework, making your bed, getting up and doing some type of small training in the morning, or maybe watching some good training videos on the internet. Do these small things and do them to completion. Don't halfway them or finding an excuse to leave them behind. By completing these little tasks, whether you feel good or feel bad, whether you're healthy or sick, whether you're tired or energetic, it's going to slowly begin to improve your mental toughness, and you will begin to see things through. Then apply that on a larger scale to things that you might be doing while responding to calls. For example, showing up on scene, and even if it's very minor smoke, or even if it's just a light haze, if you go about pulling your ladders off, then commit yourself to throwing the ladders. See things through, even though you might not need to. What could be the harm in throwing the ladders? If for nothing else, at least it's good training. And then apply this on an even larger scale to when it really matters, when it's really serious, when you have to enter in through that window, even though your body is telling you, no, I don't want to do this. Or when you have to walk through that front door knowing that you might encounter some horrific accident. You're going to learn to see things through. It doesn't matter whether you're physically or mentally the strongest person around. If you haven't taken the time to go over your gear and prepare it before that fire rings out, then you're of no good to anyone. I'm not here to insult anyone on what this gear is. However, I am going to show you how you should be preparing it when you arrive in the morning or if you're coming in for night shift. Obviously, this is SCBA. Don't need to tell you that. However, there are a couple things you need to be paying very close attention to when you do your equipment checks for your SCBA. One is your PSI. We always want it to hover around 4,000 pounds. I know that we accept sometimes that it's okay if the needle is just slightly lower, but I want you to think for 1 second about this. That couple hundred pounds here and there is a couple more seconds of life for you or for a victim that you're trying to rescue. I know it's kind of a pain, but take the time in the mornings or whenever you arrive and do your checks to swap these bottles out for one that is completely full. Another thing you need to keep in mind when you're doing your checks is your mask. Plug it up. When you turn your bottle on, make sure that there's no leaks. Make sure that you have a proper seal. Make sure that your free flow and all your other buttons work properly so that when you need them, you can count on them. One of the most critical elements of your SCBA that you want to make sure functions properly is your pass device or your bell assembly. We need to make sure that these are operating in the manner in which they're supposed to, so that if you do find yourself in a bad situation while searching or you get lost, that you can set this pass device off and everyone can hear it that's operating outside. Another piece of your equipment that is equally as important as your SCBA is your radio. Obviously, you know how to use a radio. If you don't, then it's time to stop watching this video and go learn. Reason being is that this could make the difference between life and death for you and a victim if you locate one inside of a dwelling. I know it's routine for us to come in the mornings or whenever we arrive and make sure that our radio is near our equipment or in our equipment. However, one thing that we commonly don't do is replace the battery. What you usually hear is someone say, "Battery's good in the radio, probably don't need to replace it." We cannot rely on this information. It should be routine that after you do your SCBA checks in the morning and put your gear on the rig, that you go and you swap out your radio battery. You want to make sure that the battery is fresh and you're pulling it off the charger, not pulling it from a pile that's sitting beside the charger. Another piece of real handy equipment to use with the radio is your lapel mic. Some jurisdictions don't have lapel mics and they just use the handheld radio. However, if you can find yourself a lapel mic, I highly recommend you using it, especially if you're on a truck company. You don't want to be committing yourself to a search in a room, then have to fumble through your pockets using a handheld radio. That lapel mic is there for a reason. It gives you the opportunity to go ahead and make an urgent transmission if you really need to do it. Another thing that would be great to do in order to prepare is if you're not the type of person that walks around with your radio in hand or in your pocket at the firehouse waiting for the next call, and if you like to keep your radio in your turnout gear, then go ahead and have your radio set and locked on the fire ground channel. That way, when you jump into the rig and the box rings out, the only thing you need to do is just click your radio on and you know that it's ready to go. Okay, we're going to talk for a second about PPE. I'm not going to describe to you what the different PPE is. You already know that this is a hood. However, I'm sure that there are still a lot of you out there that don't bother wearing a hood because we kind of sometimes tend to go off of old timers' advice of if your ears start tingling, then it's time to get out of the room. Listen, that might have been great advice 20, 30 years ago. However, with the amount of fire load that are in certain dwellings now and the material that they're made out of, temperatures can elevate and increase drastically, much faster than what they could years ago. It is imperative that you wear your hood to shield yourself from some of these hazards. This will eliminate your ears melting off while you're doing a search in a place that someone could be trapped. Since we're discussing PPE, let's discuss what we need to put on our PPE, especially if you're on a truck company. You should have flashlights. Flashlights are one of the most important tools that a truck man carries with him. Now, I already know that there's a stigma attached to this in some departments. We'll talk about that in a second. The rule behind flashlights: 2 is 1, 1 is none. I'm saying that because there's no guarantee that this light is going to work throughout your searching or throughout your fire ground operations. Always carry 2. 1 on your PPE jacket, 1 on your helmet if possible. Or you have the option of carrying 1 on your jacket and 1 in your pocket. Whatever works, but stick to the theory of 2 is 1 and 1 is none. Along those same lines, we want to make sure that we are changing our batteries and our flashlights or recharging them on a regular basis. If you've gone for a while without using your flashlight or haven't caught yourself a firebox, then you need to start getting in the habit of replacing those batteries at least every 2 months at minimum, and that's if they've been stored in an ideal temperature. If you're using them on a regular basis, then I would start committing myself to replacing my flashlights more like at least once a month or every 3 weeks. In addition, make sure that when you're putting your gear on the rig, you go through the checks with your flashlights too. Make sure that these lights are operational. Push them on, make sure they stay on. Give them a 5-second count, and make sure they're operating properly. I commented on there being a stigma in some departments about using a flashlight, especially in a reputable truck company. You'll hear from old timers, it's dark inside. You can't see anyway. What's the point of carrying a flashlight? This is true. It is dark inside because the place is on fire and it's charged with smoke. However, let's use a little common sense here. If you're crawling around a dwelling, committing yourself to a search, and you're coming across windows as you do, then you're inevitably going to start ventilating these windows. As you ventilate, that smoke is going to exhaust and your visibility is going to start to improve. It's going to improve even more if you have a flashlight, and that might help you differentiate between picking up a teddy bear versus finding a baby that's trapped. Inside your PPE, you should have certain equipment as well. Always try to carry either some rope or some webbing inside your pockets, especially if you're on a truck company. Now, you can fashion this in many different ways, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you how, because I stick to the basics, and I think we should keep it simple. So, I keep mine in about a 10-foot section with 2 large carabiners on the end. This isn't for any in particular reason, but it gives me the opportunity to manipulate it any way I need to in the event of emergency. The next thing that you should carry is some type of cutting device. It's very common that when you're doing a search or you're doing an interior attack, that you come into contact with something that could entangle you, whether it be a drop ceiling or whether it be wires that are stretched along the floor. A cutting device is imperative, especially if you find yourself tangled up. Let's quickly touch on hand tools. It's always a good rule of thumb to get in the habit of taking a tool with you when you go to search. This will extend your reach throughout the room, plus, in the event of emergency, you might have the proper tool that you need. The most common hand tools that a truck guy is going to take with him is a set of irons. However, this might just be isolated to your officer if he's forcing entry on the front door. So, it might be a good habit for you, if you're throwing ladders, to maybe think about taking a Halligan with you, or a flathead axe. Probably not both, going up a ladder with a ceiling hook as well. For those of you that are going to be throwing ladders and entering through windows, a ceiling hook is going to be imperative. Not only are you going to need this to clean out your window, but you might need it inside if you come across another window. It's always a good idea to take a smaller search tool with you, such as a Halligan. It's very easy to marry up with your ceiling hook. Arguably, the most important handheld tool that you could take with you on a search is going to be your TIC, or your thermal imaging camera. Now, I know that there is usually a limited amount on these on apparatus. This will eliminate you from having to do a lot of the exhausting work that comes with searching. If you're the officer, or if the thermal imaging camera is stored inside the cab near you, make sure that when you're checking your gear in the mornings that you double check and take a look at that TIC, seeing that it is plugged in and charging. One of the last things we're going to cover in terms of equipment is large area search line or tag lines. These get used quite often in areas of commercial buildings or large open floor plans where we have to search a wide area but stay connected. Your large area search line and your tag lines need to be checked periodically to make sure that there's no frays or tears in the ropes. This could prove to be devastating if you put them in service during a fire and get separated from your crew members. Preparation does not end with gear checks. As a matter of fact, it continues all the way up until your arrival. If it has been verified that someone is trapped, when you arrive on the scene and that air brake gets pulled, you should already have this on your face and ready to plug up when needed. We commonly see videos of firefighters arriving on the scene knowing that there's a possibility that someone's trapped inside, and yet they are still jumping out of their trucks without the SCBA mask in place. This is arriving unprepared and is unacceptable, especially when someone's life is counting on you. To add to it, if you know that you're arriving on the scene of an occupied dwelling, then we have to go back to assuming that there still could be somebody inside. So your size up on the way to this firebox, and even when that parking brake gets pulled, must be thinking along the lines of, what do I have to do to get inside and help this person? This is all part of preparation and developing a mental plan. We can do this on a daily basis without having to do the actual response to the fire. Being prepared is not a difficult thing to do. It's as simple as checking your gear and having a plan in place when that call comes out, because eventually it's going to. Remember, preparation saves seconds. Seconds save minutes, and minutes saves lives. Now that we're prepared, we need to find out exactly what it is we're going to be searching when we arrive to the scene. Well, there are a couple things that can help us along the way. One being any information we're getting from dispatch on the way there and upon arrival. But two, and most importantly, are actually people there in front of us telling us that there is someone trapped, verifying that we need to get in there and find these people. They could even give us some specific details about where they think they're trapped, or in fact, if they actually live there, then they can give us an exact location. If you don't have someone in the front yard screaming, "Help, help, help," there's someone inside, then you're going to have to revert back to your training. This comes with your size ups and what you know about your area and the structures that are in it. You need to know that when you're approaching a home, where the most likely locations would be for bedrooms, living rooms, and things of that nature. You should be practicing this in your size ups, and you don't need to be going on fireboxes to practice size ups. You can do them on routine calls, whether they're medic calls or gas leaks. When you're simply getting out of the truck, Look at the structure that you're approaching. In your mind, size it up. Size it up for what you might need to do one day, getting in there and searching. When you arrive on scene and commit yourself to a search, if you're lucky enough to be one of the firefighters that's able to walk through the front door to begin your search, then you should be heading to one specific area, and that is the closest rooms to the seat of the fire. This is because these are the most dangerous rooms. We need to clear them first. Instead of working our way towards the fire, we're going to start working our way away from it. If we're one of the firefighters that is committed to entering through a window via a ladder, then our ability to decide exactly what we're going to search is limited. I say this because if you're entering into a room through a ladder, there's a good chance that it could be a bedroom. That means you need to immediately commit yourself to a search. This might not be the room that's closest to the seat of the fire. I know that. However, it is a bedroom, more than likely. And that happens to be the number one place where victims are found. So why is this? Why do we find most of our victims inside of bedrooms? Well, it's due to one reason, and one reason only. The majority of our structural fires that come out with people trapped is between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. This is the most common time for people to be sleeping. So they're either going to be in their bedrooms or closest to their bedrooms in an area of egress. So let's quickly discuss what an area of egress means. An area of egress in relation to a bedroom could mean the doorway, could mean below the windowsill. It also could mean the hallway leading into their bedroom. These are the areas where adults are most commonly found during structural fires. Children, on the other hand, are slightly different. Where a child could be found is unfortunately very unpredictable. A lot of it depends on the age of that child and whether or not they woke up hearing a smoke detector sound. If they did, more than likely, a child of the age of a toddler or older is going to try to make their way towards their parents because they are creatures of comfort, and that's where they find security. So, with that in mind, when you're searching a bedroom and you find an adult, you need to continue on after you save that person because there could be a child near them. Children of a younger age do things that are even more bizarre, such as climbing into bathtubs, getting under their mattresses, or climbing under their bed. If they have bunk beds, sometimes they'll go to the top of the bunk bed. They've even been known to climb inside their toy boxes or dresser drawers. There's no rhyme or reason to what they do, or why we sometimes find kids dead in closets. We know that they're trying to seek security, and a lot of times they consider this a place that is dark and secretive to them. Many of these areas, both for adults and children, are commonly missed or simply just skimmed over by firefighters that are doing searches haphazardly. This is why your search needs to be aggressive but methodical. One of the most common reasons that our searches don't get done properly, especially in a situation where we have a confirmed person trapped, is because of the enormous amount of stress placed on that firefighter that's doing the search. When you're under tremendous amounts of stress, what commonly happens is something known as tunnel vision. That means that your view of things narrows and you're hurrying and not paying attention to what you're doing. This is very dangerous and has been proven deadly for firefighters because we're not picking up on cues around us and not doing our size-ups properly. And when I say size-ups, I'm also talking about us moving our way through a dwelling, committing ourselves to a search. We're skipping over things because of our stress levels. We need to slow down and think. The only way you can confront this issue is by training as real as possible for these searches. Train, 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 and do it as hard as it is possible to do. There are some common sense rules that we always abide by when we're committing ourselves to a search. It doesn't matter whether you entered in through the front door or whether you came in through a window via the ladder. Depending on the conditions inside, if we have poor visibility, then you should be low to the ground. Nose to the floor is the rule of thumb. This is where the visibility is going to be the best. and greatly increase your chances for finding a victim. We also want to make sure when we're going down hallways and entering through rooms that we are checking with our tool covering the entire span of the hall and the doorway upon entry. Another key element that's going to aid in our progression of our search is listening to the radio, hearing what's happening with the fire and any possibilities as to where a trapped victim might be. Remember, your search needs to be aggressive. That means quickly and methodically. As you progress down the hallway, make sure that you're staying low and moving your tool from side to side, checking for any victims. As you approach a doorway, we want to make sure that we're feeling our door for heat and then find the handle. Once we open the door, we need to immediately check the area of the door frame, making sure that there are no victims. We will then quickly enter the room. Remember, we want to enter the room quickly and close the door behind us immediately to shield us from any fire spread. Your search needs to be aggressive and methodical, coming off the wall when necessary, checking under the bed, checking over top the mattress, clearing the pillows. If it's a bunk bed, we want to check the upper mattress as well. When we come upon any furniture, we want to sweep over top and underneath, making sure that we maintain room integrity at all times. An aggressive search does not mean a furious search. An aggressive search, we are locating all the furniture. However, room integrity means that we are not destroying that furniture or throwing it around the room. This can become a hazard if we need to find a means of egress in a case of an emergency. This is what we don't want to see. Furious searches destroy room integrity completely. If you're working with limited visibility and you've destroyed the integrity of a room, then you've just increased your chances on becoming another victim. It's very possible for you, by throwing things around the room, to cut off your avenue of egress in case things go bad quickly. In addition, if you come across a victim now, you've made it increasingly difficult to even possibly remove that victim or get help to you if you need it. When we're preparing to enter to do a search from a ladder, there are specific points of interest. Number one being, your ladder needs to be thrown properly. The tips of the ladder need to be at the windowsill, not below, so the firefighter has to reach to climb in, and not above, so that there are numerous rungs showing in the window. Before the firefighter begins to ascend the ladder, we need to make sure that the halyard is tied off or tucked away so it doesn't become a trip hazard. We also recommend that if you're preparing to climb up to do a search, you carry two tools with you, one for ventilation and one for searching. Lastly, the most important thing is to make sure that you're plugged up to your SCBA before you begin your climb. As Greg plugs up to his SCBA, he's going to begin his climb. He's got both hands on the rails, and take note of the way he has his tools married up. Do us a favor and stop there, Greg. Notice that Greg decided to take a Halligan and a ceiling hook with him. Also, take a look at how he has them married up. This is going to help him climb because he has both tools in one hand and he still has his hand on the rail. Greg's going to continue to ascend the ladder until he reaches his desired height. Notice where Greg stops. The reason for this is because his upper torso is not in the window. He's going to prepare to ventilate this window, so he's going to need to take his Halligan and rest it on the ladder rungs. Go ahead, Greg, and show him how you do it. Then Greg's going to take a ceiling hook and reach for the sash of the window so that he can come down on it, effectively removing the entire window and all of its hardware. From there, he's going to make sure that the glass is cleaned out. When he's done, he can bring his ceiling hook to a rest right on the ladder rung. After Greg secures the ceiling hook, he's going to take his Halligan and begin his advance through the window. Once he reaches the windowsill, he's going to reach in and complete a sweep in case there's a victim below the window. Next thing he's going to do is lightly sound the floor with his Halligan. He's going to proceed to come in low because of the superheated gas that's above him. I want you to take a look at Greg's hands. He's got one hand on the outside wall and one hand on the interior wall. Take note that he is not grabbing the window frame. The reason for this is because you don't know how well those frames are secured, and any significant heat can damage their integrity. If you haphazardly pull yourself in through a weak window frame, it's very likely that you're going to pull it down on you and fall to the ground. As Greg enters the window, he's staying low. He retrieves the ceiling hook from his ladder, and he's going to begin his search. After Greg enters the window, starting his search, he's going to do his best to maintain wall contact where he can. As he works his way around the room, if he's able to come to the bedroom door, he's going to close it to prevent any type of fire spread. As he continues the search, if he should find another window, he will then ventilate that window. That way he releases any trapped smoke or hot gases. Your tools might not be the same tools that we're using. Take a look at them and take note of how you can marry your tools up, depending on what tools you choose to take with you when doing a search. It's very easy to marry a Halligan up with a New York hook. One trouble area that we come across when we're climbing a ladder and preparing to separate our tools is how we secure them to the ladder rungs. When you reach your desired height on the ladder to begin your ventilation, you're going to take your Halligan off of your ceiling hook. The best way to secure this to your ladder is to take your adze end and your spike end and place them securely on top of the ladder rungs. When you're finished ventilating and preparing to enter, take the claw end of your hook and bring it to rest on your ladder rungs. You can then remove your Halligan to begin your search. Remember, upon entering a room from a ladder, we want to make sure that we sweep underneath the sill with our hand first, then sound the floor. After entering, we're going to commit ourselves to a search, maintaining wall contact with possible, and trying to reach the doorway to close it down to prevent fire spread. As you progress through your search, if you come upon another window, we are going to ventilate that to promote the exhaust of smoke and heat. While searching the room, if we should come across a victim, we immediately want to check its status through physical contact. Then, if all possible, we want to remove that victim to the lowest point. Sometimes our victims aren't small, so it may be difficult to get them to the floor. But there's a reason for attempting to do this. The floor is going to be the safest place for these victims. Plus, it allows us to shield them if we can't get them out on our own. The reason that the floor is the safest place is because that's where the least amount of heat is and smoke. If you're unable to remove your victim to the floor, then we want to shield them as best as possible. For the purpose of the camera, we're showing you the victim's face, but in reality, he would be covered up. The next crucial step is radioing command that you have found a victim. This can be done with an urgent message. During your transmission, you want to make sure to include that you have found a victim and what that victim's status is. You also want to include what you plan to do and if you need help. Your plan is your plan of egress. Do you plan on removing this victim on your own, or do you need another rescuer? Are you going to plan on taking them down the staircase or out of a window? These are the things command needs to know in order to get help to you and to the victim. Whether large or small, I can honestly tell you that removing a victim from a dwelling can be one of the most physically and mentally exhausting things you ever have to do. And that is if it all goes to plan. I highly recommend that you don't let that hero syndrome kick in of thinking you can do it all on your own. 2 rescuers are always going to be better than 1. Not only will this help to keep you safe, but it increases the chances of the victim's survival as well. One of the greatest things that you could ever do is saving another human life. Aggressive primary searches have been proven throughout the generations to be the most effective means of preventing a horrific death. However, if you are ill-prepared and undertrained, you will quickly become the one that needs the rescue instead of the rescuer. Thank you for joining us, and if you like what you saw, then check us out on the web. To all you Facebook firemen, let the trolling begin, and I want to say thank you for your service. But to all you real firemen, keep it simple. And we're going to be cliche and say, see you on the big one.